The red dust of Ouagadougou settled like ancestral whispers on the shoulders of Captain Ibrahim Traoré as he strode across the military compound, his boots echoing against the concrete with the rhythm of a war drum. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of amber and gold, colors that reminded him of his grandmother's Kent cloth, the one she wore when she told stories of warriors who never bowed to foreign kings. "Barca mon capitaine," called out Sergeant Aminata Sawadogo, her voice carrying the musical lilt of the Moor language before switching to French. "The international press is gathering like vultures. They smell blood in the water." Ibrahim paused at the entrance to the communications center, his weathered hands resting on the doorframe. At 34 he had already lived through more coups than most men twice his age, but this moment felt different. The weight of the ancestors pressed upon his shoulders, their voices whispering through the harmattan wind that swept across the Sahel. "Let them come," he said, his voice carrying the deep resonance of the talking drums that had once summoned his people to war. "Today we remind the world that the lion does not apologize for his roar." The communications center buzzed with activity, soldiers manning radio equipment, intelligence officers poring over satellite feeds, and in the corner, a single television screen flickered with images from across the Atlantic. The American news networks were already spinning their narrative. Terrorist attack on U.S. military base? Burkina Faso involvement suspected. International response imminent. But Ibrahim knew the truth. The strike hadn't been terrorism, it had been justice. For too long, the American military had operated with impunity across the Sahel, their drones painting death across the sky like some perverted constellation. They had called it counterterrorism, but the children who cowered in the ruins of bomb schools had other names for it. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Colonel Mamadou Cabaret, his tribal scarification visible even in the dim light of the command center. "The President of the United States is about to address the nation. He's threatening military intervention." Ibrahim nodded, his fingers unconsciously tracing the gold bracelet his grandmother had given him, a relic from the days when the Mossy Kingdom stood proud and unconquered. "Then we must respond. But not with fear. Not with submission. We respond with the voice of our ancestors." The television screen flickered to life, showing the familiar figure of the American president behind his mahogany desk, the flags of empire draped behind him like the skin of conquered nations. His voice, when it came, was sharp with manufactured anger. "My fellow Americans, this morning our brave servicemen and women came under attack by forces allied with the military government of Burkina Faso. This unprovoked aggression will not stand. I am authorizing immediate sanctions against the Traoré regime, and I warn Captain Traoré that any further hostile action will be met with the full force of American military might." The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the distant call of evening prayers drifting from the mosque beyond the compound walls. Ibrahim felt the familiar fire building in his chest, the same fire that had burned in his ancestors when they faced the French colonial armies, when they chose death over submission. "Prepare the broadcast," he commanded, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Tonight, the world will hear the voice of Africa unbroken." As his communications team scrambled to establish the satellite link, Ibrahim stepped outside into the compound courtyard. The evening air was thick with the scent of acacia flowers and the smoke from cooking fires in the nearby neighborhoods. This was his land, his people, his responsibility. The weight of it settled on him like a sacred cloak. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister Fatou in the village where they had grown up. "Petit frère, the whole village is watching. Mama Yanenga's spirit is with you." Mama Yanenga, the legendary warrior princess whose horse had founded the Mossy Kingdoms. Even in death, she remained the guardian of their people's dignity. "Sir, we're ready," Sergeant Sawadogo announced, her voice reverent. She understood what this moment meant, not just for Burkina Faso, but for every African nation that had ever felt the boot of foreign power on its neck. Ibrahim walked back into the communications center, where a camera had been set up facing a simple desk. No flags, no imperial trappings, just a man and his convictions. Behind him, barely visible in the shot, hung a single photograph. Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary president who had dared to dream of an Africa free from foreign interference before an assassin's bullet silenced his voice. "We are live in 30 seconds, sir," the cameraman announced. Ibrahim closed his eyes and felt the presence of his ancestors flowing through him like river water. He could hear his grandmother's voice telling stories of the resistance, of warriors who faced French cannons with spears and shields, of slaves who broke their chains and walked home across impossible distances. Their courage lived in his blood, their wisdom in his words. And, "We're live." Ibrahim opened his eyes and stared directly into the camera, his gaze steady and uncompromising. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of a man who had never learned to bow. My name is Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and I speak to you not as a soldier or a politician, but as a son of Africa. This morning, the President of the United States threatened my country with military intervention. He spoke of our unprovoked aggression, and promised to unleash his war machine upon our people. He paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. In the background, the call to prayer echoed across the city, a reminder of the spiritual foundation upon which his people had built their resistance. But I must ask, what is unprovoked about defending our sovereignty? What is aggressive about saying no to foreign military bases on our soil? For decades, your government has treated Africa like a chessboard, moving pieces at will, toppling governments that displease you, installing puppets who dance to your tune. You have bombed our schools and called it counterterrorism. You have poisoned our water and called it development aid. You have stolen our resources and called it free trade. The camera captured the fire in his eyes, the same fire that had burned in Patrice Lumumba's eyes when he spoke of Congolese independence, in Kwame Nkrumah's eyes when he declared that Ghana was free forever. So when your military base, built on our soil without our consent, became a staging ground for attacks against our people, we acted. We struck back. And now you threaten us with retaliation, as if we were children who had forgotten our place. Ibrahim leaned forward, his voice dropping to the intimate tone of a grandfather telling stories around a fire. But let me tell you something, Mr. President. We are not children. We are the descendants of the Mossi kingdoms, the heirs of the Ghana Empire, the children of warriors who faced your guns with spears and never surrendered. We built universities in Timbuktu when your ancestors were still painting their faces blue. We created mathematical theorems while your scholars were still debating whether the earth was flat. The rhythm of his words began to mirror the cadence of the griots, the traditional storytellers whose voices had carried African history across generations. In the command center, his soldiers stood transfixed, hearing their own dignity reflected in their leader's words. You speak of your military might as if it were divine judgment. But we have seen your mighty army humbled by rice farmers in Vietnam, by shepherds in Afghanistan, by determination in the face of your technological superiority. Power is not measured in bombs and bullets, Mr. President. It is measured in the willingness to die for what you believe in. The camera captured the scarification on his cheek, traditional markings that identified him as a child of the Sahel, a keeper of ancient wisdom in a modern world. I know you are watching this broadcast and I know you expect me to beg for your mercy, to promise submission in exchange for peace. But I am not my predecessors. I was not installed by your intelligence agencies. I do not have Swiss bank accounts or American passports. I am a soldier of Africa, and I would rather die standing than live kneeling. Outside, the compound had fallen silent except for the distant sound of evening prayers and the whisper of wind through the acacia trees. But across the city, in homes and tea shops and gathering places, people were watching, their hearts swelling with a pride they had not felt in generations. So bring your sanctions, Mr. President. We have survived colonialism, structural adjustment programs, and the theft of our resources. We will survive your economic warfare too. Bring your military threats. We have faced French Foreign Legion, British colonial forces, and mercenary armies. We are still here. Ibrahim's voice rose, taking on the power of a preacher calling the faithful to salvation. But know this, every bomb you drop will create 10 more revolutionaries. Every innocent you kill will inspire 100 more to take up arms. Every act of aggression will be met with resistance, because we have learned the lesson our ancestors taught us, that a people who will not fight for their freedom do not deserve it. The broadcast was being carried live by news networks across the globe, translated into dozens of languages, watched by millions of people who had never heard of Burkina Faso but were now witnessing something unprecedented, an African leader speaking truth to power without fear or apology. You call us terrorists, but we are freedom fighters. You call us extremists, but we are patriots. You call us threats to international peace, but we are defenders of our own soil. And when history judges this moment, it will not remember your threats and your military might. It will remember that on this day in this place Africa said no to empire and meant it. The camera held steady on his face as he prepared to deliver his closing words, the weight of history pressing down upon him like the hand of every ancestor who had ever dreamed of this moment. So I say to you, Donald Trump, President of the United States, you have awakened a sleeping lion. And the lion's roar will echo across this continent until every foreign soldier has gone home, until every military base has been closed, until every puppet government has fallen. We are not asking for your permission to be free. We are not seeking your approval for our sovereignty. We are informing you that the age of your dominance over Africa is ending. He stood up from behind the desk, his full height commanding the frame. Africa is rising, Mr. President. And you can either step aside or be swept away by the tide of history. The choice is yours. The broadcast ended, but the silence that followed was not empty, it was pregnant with possibility, electric with the energy of a continent that had rediscovered its voice. In the command center, Ibrahim's soldiers erupted in cheers, their voices rising in songs of praise that their grandfathers had sung on the battlefield. But Ibrahim himself remained quiet, his eyes fixed on the photograph of Thomas Sankara, wondering if his revolutionary predecessor could see this moment from the realm of the ancestors. Sir, Sergeant Sawadogo approached, her voice thick with emotion. The phones are ringing off the hook. Presidents from across Africa are calling to pledge their support. The people are in the streets singing your name. Ibrahim nodded, but his expression remained grave. He understood that this was not the end of the confrontation, it was the beginning. The American president would not tolerate such defiance, and the response would be swift and brutal. But something had changed in the spiritual landscape of Africa, something that could not be bombed or sanctioned out of existence. Tell me, Aminata, he said, using her first name as he rarely did. Do you believe in the ancestors? She smiled, her teeth white against her dark skin. How can I not, sir? They are standing all around us. Ibrahim walked to the window and looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the darkness. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sound of celebrations, people dancing in the streets, singing songs that had been passed down through generations of resistance. The spirit of Mama Yanenga was indeed walking among them, her warrior's heart beating in time with the drums of celebration. But even as he savored this moment of triumph, Ibrahim knew that the real test was yet to come. The American president would not accept this humiliation quietly. There would be economic warfare, diplomatic isolation, perhaps even military intervention. The path ahead was dark and uncertain, filled with dangers that could destroy everything they had built. Yet as he stood there, feeling the weight of his ancestors' expectations and the hopes of his people, Ibrahim Traoré felt something he had never experienced before, the absolute certainty that he was standing on the right side of history. The lion had roared, and the sound would echo across time, inspiring future generations of Africans to stand tall in the face of empire. In the distance, the call to prayer continued, a reminder that some things were more powerful than armies, more enduring than empires. And as the night settled over Ouagadougou like a blessing, Ibrahim Traoré prepared for the battle of his life, knowing that win or lose, he had already achieved something precious. He had reminded the world that Africa was not a victim, but a warrior, and that warriors do not bow to anyone. The revolution had begun, not with guns or bombs, but with words that carried the weight of ancestral wisdom and the power of unbroken dignity. And somewhere in the realm of the ancestors, the spirits of Thomas Sankara and Mama Yanenga smiled, knowing that their legacy lived on in the voice of a young captain who had chosen freedom over fear, dignity over submission, and the roar of the lion over the silence of the lamb. The world would never be the same.